Hi everybody, this is Matt from Music Radar here, and today we're speaking to Doug Rogers from EastWest Sounds, who's here to tell us about some of the fantastic new products they've got lined up for 2022. Hi Doug, could you start off by introducing yourself and EastWest and just telling us a little bit about what you guys do?
Sure. EastWest is a veteran in the sounds industry. I think we put out the first commercial drum sample CD in 1988, when there really wasn't an industry. And since then, we've uh, we've been developing products, for 30 plus years. Obviously, harnessing the technology as it's been developing throughout that period. Which has enabled us to do, better and more wonderful things as time has gone on. I mean, back in the day, we were in a total RAM world. There was no streaming. Everything was very limited. The hardware, there was no software at that point. The hardware was extremely limited. 1995, we put out a two velocity piano that required two Akai samplers. So it was very primitive. And then we got involved with a company in Texas in developing the gigasampler technology, which was the first technology to harness streaming from hard disk. And the industry just sort of blossomed from there. Um, we're based in Los Angeles. We have our own studios. We have 5 studios in Los Angeles, a production team both in Los Angeles, and we have a software development team in Germany, headed up by some veterans that have done some pretty amazing software in the music software world. And that's sort of a brief overview.
Thanks, Doug. We've heard that 2021 was quite a big year for EastWest. Could you tell us about a few of the products you guys were working on last year?
Right. Well, we started off with a product called excuse me, Backup Singers, which was our first attempt to use our word builder technology with a small ensemble group of vocalists, 3 of them. 2 of them actually toured with Pink Floyd for over 10 years. Um, and At the time, we weren't sure whether the word builder technology, which relies somewhat on some smearing to sort of get rid of the artifacts, was going to work with such a small group of singers. So we actually worked on 2 products in case the word builder stuff didn't work, and it actually did work fantastically well. So that was our entry into the year, and then along the way we were also planning on a major upgrade of our Hollywood Orchestra, which was getting on the beginnings of which was getting on for 10 years at that point. And over the years, of course, you get feedback from users. You have your own wish list. You have the technology is advancing, tremendously during that time. So we felt it was time for an upgrade. We didn't need to sort of go back and re-record like most of the instruments. We thought the recordings were fine, but we did add something like 130 gigabytes of new content. And more importantly, during the last 5 years preceding that, we were developing our new Opus software with the 2 Wolfgangs. Wolfgang Kundris, who's a developer of Cubase, Studio One, Nuendo, and Wolfgang Schneider, who's a developer of Contact, both of which joined our team. So we spent a 5-year period developing the software, with sound design in mind purely, and uh, having our own team enabled us to do things that we just simply couldn't have done had we been, doing an OEM license with some third party software, because not because they couldn't, but because they don't have the bandwidth to provide that attention to detail as if when you have your own team. So all of those things came together at the same time, and that resulted in the release in April of the Hollywood Orchestra Opus Edition. And it's been extremely well received, in the market. It's already won awards, and we're very pleased with the outcome. We also added another addition to that in the form of Hollywood Orchestrator. Hollywood Orchestrator is a tool that started off with 500 presets. We're now developing a lot more for it, but it gives you a starting point using the Hollywood Orchestra Opus Edition to do sort of, meat and potatoes type stuff in terms of getting ideas, doing stuff that's pretty repetitive when you're doing orchestral composition. It also enables the composer to make their own presets. So if they have, something that they like to work with, the whole thing really just is an ideas factory, and also enables people to speed up the process of composing. I mean, we have composers over here that have to produce, 20 minutes of music a week, and that's no small task. That's like half an album, that they have to do in a week. So anything that we can give them to speed up that process without compromising the quality of the end product is very welcome news.
And how does the new software engine work? What's that bringing to the product?
Well, we were lucky that towards the end of the development, we learned that Apple, for example, was going with their own silicon. So we were able to make it native Apple silicon, not quite out of the box, but it is now. We were waiting on some other developments from other third parties to be able to do that, but it is now. So it's really the only sound software playback system that is native. Everything else is running in Rosetta, which is, as you know, is an emulation. So that gives you a tremendous amount of power and speed that you're not going to get out of any emulation. And some of this other software that people are using is so old now, it just simply can't be adapted, to the new thing. So that's something that is helpful when you're kind of late to the party. I mean, before that we had Play software, but that grew old in the tooth. It got to the point also where we couldn't really develop it any further because it was built, on an old framework. So I think, having that was probably the most consequential part of the Opus update. That we were able to do things we only dreamed of when we started that project. And we were able to re-engineer the whole collection and add 130 gigs of new instruments. And Orchestrator, which is, anybody that's used it is just a real time saver.
We hear that you've got a new synth coming out, Forbidden Planet, in 2022. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
We do. It's not really a synth in the traditional sense. It's not using oscillators or wavetables or stuff like that. We steered away from that because there are hundreds of them, and I don't think the world needed another one. But basically, we always have Nick and I have always had a love of synth sounds, and he uses them a lot in his Two Steps from Hell productions. So he has an arsenal of 30, 40 synths that he's weeded out. Hardware synths, not software synths. None of them are software. I don't actually like software synths that much. I don't think they sound quite as good as the hardware versions. So we did combinations. We really used our sound design expertise to put combinations of synths together and create new hybrid sounds that we like the sound of. And then we added another little wrinkle in that we also did another one on the other side of the mod wheel. So you can use the mod wheel to sort of mix between them and come up with quite unique sounds and custom sounds, because not everyone's going to use the same combination. So it makes the product a little bit more customizable. that's in a nutshell. It's you know, there's 7 categories in it. We're covering all kind of bases. We're not really focused on like the EDM market.
Mm.
We're more focused on the film market. That's what we've tended to do over our careers. You know, our core customer, if you like, is more a media composer than than an EDM artist. Um, However, I mean, we are, as I speak, building a synth into Opus that eventually will allow us to do that kind of synth as well, or in combination, use a wavetable synth with real sounds. And the other little aspect of it is we're not always going from X Y on the mod wheel to another synth. We're often going to another acoustic instrument or orchestral instrument or something else that you can mix together. You know, we tried to do this like 10 years ago, and we first announced this product I think in 2008, more than 10 years ago, and we were hoping to do a morphing synthesizer, but we could never ever we just kept our eye on the technology. We could never really find a morphing tool that produced the sound that we were looking for. Um, you can get some good sounds out of morphing, but it's very hit and miss. I would say out of every 10 you try, you might get one good one. You know,
Mm.
so we kind of abandoned that idea in the end, and decided just to use the mod wheel. And then in addition to that, we have this sort of cursor in the middle, which is actually a small planet that we move around a large planet. And the XY axis is mimicking what the mod wheel's doing, from X to Y. The the little planet, the small planet, also enables us to go north and south and east and west and all the rest of it, in which case we're introducing other tools, filters and all sorts of stuff. So you can really sort of hone and customize the sound. And what we're hoping is that people see this more as a sound design tool rather than a synthesizer. I think it's more akin to sort of like an omnisphere than it is to
Mm.
a serum,
Yeah.
uh, and you have really kind of focused on making the presets, as usable as possible. Our beef with most synths that we come across is that, there might be one out of every 10 sounds that's kind of usable. The other nine are just sort of
Mm.
window dressing.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the concept. Whether we pull it off or not, our customers will no doubt tell
Mm.
us.
And what can producers and composers get access to with your new Composer Cloud subscription service?
Well, anyone that joins has access to everything we made, and we used to have categories, that based on price points and things like that. We just in the last month got rid of that, and there's only one version now. It's called
Mm.
Composer Cloud Plus. Composer Cloud Plus is the version that has all the mic positions. It has basically the product that we made. It's not cut down to like gold versions, and we have one mic
Mm.
and it's 16-bit and all the rest of it. This is all 24-bit, multiple mic positions. Everything that's in the full-on perpetual product is now in Composer Cloud. The other thing that we were able to do with the Opus software, because we were kind of shut out of the recording studio business because, which is ironic because we own 5 of them, because the downloads just took too long, because people had to download a whole product because you can't do that in a session. So we now have individual instrument downloads in Opus. So you can do a search, you can audition, and then if you like the instrument that's there, think it works with the track that you're working on live in the studio, you can download that. Usually it takes like 1 or 2 minutes to download that instrument. So we've now opened up the whole recording studio market. That will be a focus in 2022. We'll
Mm.
be we'll be really diving into that market and trying to make that an essential tool for studios, because I think, you know, back in the day before I was involved in this business, I was an engineer producer, and I would have loved to have had something like that when I was working on productions. Just you're always looking for something unusual. You're always looking for some little wrinkle to put in the track. Something that makes it stand out from all the other tracks that are out there. So I think this is something it's a lot of work for us because we really haven't done we're not a big name in that industry, apart from our own studios, which is very successful. So that's going to be a focus for us. Plus we have a lot of other stuff. We feel that with Composer Cloud, it's very important to continue to create and add new content. It's sort of like we really kind of stole the whole idea from Adobe Creative Cloud.
Yeah.
And modeled the whole thing that way too. Adobe had, because they're a public company, there was a lot of information available about things that we needed to know to make it all work. And so that was great. We sort of adopted it to our industry, and of course because we use iLok, even though it's now machine based and you don't need a key. That enables us to sort of turn the subscriptions on and off if we need to. So we're kind of like a Netflix, I guess, in our industry. And just like those streaming services, it's really important to keep adding new content, even though the content that's in there for the price we charge for it, I think is ridiculous value.
How much is the subscription service again?
It's $19.99 a month. And you've got over something close to 43,000 instruments right now, and everything. One thing that we've done as a company, as opposed to our competitors, is we haven't pigeonholed ourselves into a particular genre. So we have a real diversity of genres available. So anything you might want to do, it doesn't matter, hip hop, rap, EDM, whatever, it's all there. And of course, a large variety of stuff for media composers. So it's working really well. We started it back in 2015. It got off to a slow start because the industry wasn't really used to it, used to that concept. There's still some people that will never buy a subscription. They just don't believe in renting. But they're getting fewer and far between. And even the diehards, they're sort of over the course of the last 6 years, we see them filtering over, realizing what tremendous value it is. They never have to buy a $500 or $1,000 product again. They just get it once it's released. And in the case of Forbidden Planet, they're actually going to get it before it's released, because we're releasing it in 7 parts. And then by the time we get to the 7th part, then we'll release it as a perpetual product. So we've got that in the works. We also have a couple of things that we're working on. Your own Stephen Wilson. I don't know if you know Stephen Wilson. He did the Ghostwriter collection for us a few years back. Porcupine Tree. He does a lot of Dolby Atmos mixing. A lot of the progressive rock 60s and 70s bands. He goes back to the original tapes, puts them onto Pro Tools, remixes them into Dolby Atmos. He does a lot of that stuff. But he did the Ghostwriter project with me a few years back, and he's coming back over in January. We're going to be doing a sequel to that, hopefully with some Dolby Atmos material. And we have a few other things up our sleeve that'll be coming out in 2022. There's never a dull moment, trust me.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for speaking with us today, Doug. Really appreciate it.
Okay.